Hi, I'm Grace Stevens. It brings me great pleasure to be able to be here with you virtually today. Can you imagine virtually? About a year ago, this would have never been the case. We would have been meeting together right here. I'd be able to see all of you, but now I'm having to come to you through a video camera, through something called Zoom. I'm just happy to be able to have a conversation with you regardless. I'm happy to be alive, and I hope that you are too. So I've been asked today to speak to this group of corporate people, entrepreneurs, and business owners about what they're doing to get through all of the calamity that's currently happening in our country, in our nation, to us, to our whole beings. These things are hurting every aspect of our lives, our health, our finances, our families, our businesses. We're in the midst of a pandemic. On top of that, there's civil unrest. On top of that, there is a transition. Today was the inauguration of the new president, one that's outgoing, one that's incoming. There's change, guys, happening all around us all the time. But in the midst of that change, there's something we have to remember. We have something to do with making sure that we successfully make it through times of change, especially times of change where we have truly no control over the environmental factors that are impacting us. When things like that happen, it always makes me think of something that's important to remember. Change is inevitable. Change is going to happen regardless if we like it or not. From the time we were in the womb until the time we die, we will experience change in us, around us, and even to us. Some of the change lately that we've been experiencing, we have no control over. But again, as I said, it's important that we take ownership of that change and that we do something that I call, and others call, pivoting. I love the word pivoting. Let me tell you why. Pivoting is something that you do. Sometimes it's planned and other times it's not. In a state of this situation where people are trying to figure out what they're going to do, it is so imperative that you do one thing: pivot. Let me demonstrate what pivoting is. Now, I used to model, believe it or not. Yes, I used to, many years ago. Remember when we all thought we were cute in our 18, 19, 20 years old? Our bodies were beautiful and we were just so young and fresh and, well, anyway. During that time, I modeled. I even had an opportunity to model on the Apollo Theater stage and model in some videos and things like that. But there was one thing that we were taught to do as models, and that was to pivot. 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 Okay? So if you notice what I did, in order to pivot, you need to step forward, put all your weight onto one foot, and focus on the direction in which you're going to turn, right? So, pivot, pivot, and pivot. But when we're turning, if you're not careful, you may lose your balance, right? And your legs might come out from under you. And it's the same thing when it's time for us to pivot when we're dealing with troubling times. It's not always easy to change the course of direction that you're already headed. You were already planning to go in this direction, and now all of a sudden you have to pivot. Pivoting is going in one direction and having to change a completely different way. And how do we do that? How do we do that? Since this pandemic happened, it has been I've been hearing from so many different people who have been talking about how it has impacted them. There's so many people that I know who have had COVID-19. There are people that I know who have maybe not contracted COVID-19, but they know someone else who has had it. And there are people, sadly, that I know who have lost their lives to this pandemic. And I know that there are people that you know who have lost their lives to this pandemic. How in the world are we supposed to deal with situations like this? I know that there are people that have lost their businesses. 50% of the restaurant owners in this country have closed their doors for good during this pandemic. The government is well aware of what is going on. They are trying their best to provide us with subsidies in the forms of grants and loans to try to make things work. Even recently, they brought out this shuttered venues, live venues grant or loan. They have the PPP-1 and PPP-2. I mean, there's so many different ways in which we're trying to support people that are going through this unfathomable, unbelievable situation. There are people who are now homeless as a result of this. People have lost their jobs. I can't begin to tell you how many people that I know that are unemployed as a result of something they never would have ever anticipated. People who have had great jobs, great positions, and were let go. How do we deal with these situations? We who are left to support the people around us that are dealing with these same situations. Loss of job, loss of life, loss of businesses, loss of health. We who are left standing, those of you that are listening to me via this virtual webcast, you're okay. You know why? Because you can hear me, you can see me, you woke up today, you are alive. So in that case, what do we do in a situation like this? We need to be the rock. We need to be able to be strong as we press forward through this. Let me talk to you. I don't often watch TV, and I don't watch Friends a lot, but there was an episode in Friends, I don't know if you guys remember this, when they were trying to move a couch. So two of the guys, the only person I know on Friends is Jennifer Aniston, to be honest, okay, the name that I know. One guy was sitting on the couch. Jennifer walks in and she's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I just created this plan to move this couch upstairs." And she's like, "Okay, well, let me see your plan." He picks it up and she shows it to him. She says, "Okay," and he shows it to her and she says, "Okay, fine." Then the other person comes in and he's like, "Well, what's going on?" He says, "I need to move this couch upstairs. I need a plan to do that." Well, actually, he asked what's going on. The one guy said, I've developed a plan to move the couch upstairs. So they decide to embark on this plan, to execute the plan. They all pick up the couch according to the plan that was written. They start going up the stairs and somebody starts getting squeezed between the staircase and the couch. So there's some things happening there that's preventing them from getting where they need to be, right? Which is up the stairs with the couch. As they're going up the stairs, then they're realizing this is much more difficult than we had anticipated. So now they're stuck. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Why? Because it's hard for them to, if you've ever moved furniture, you can't just start moving the furniture and stop. You either have to retract or you have to press forward. So they decided to press forward. So they're pushing up, trying, and Jennifer's helping too. So two guys, one girl. And the one guy is like, "Okay, what do we need to do?" He says, "Okay, push, push." Then the other guy's like, "We're pushing, nothing's happening. We're carrying out your plan, nothing is happening." He says, okay, push a little more. Nothing's happening. Then he starts saying, we need to pivot. We need to pivot. And they're still pushing. They're still trying to get it. And he's like, pivot, pivot. And he's screaming, pivot. And this guy, the other friend's like, stop it already. Stop telling us that. And so Jennifer says, the plan was so well written out. What happened? And he's like, I have no idea. And so they're like, well, what do? We can't bring it back up and we can't bring it back down. We're stuck. And so he starts to complain about it. And then the one guy says, you know what? This was terrible. And by the way, what does it mean to pivot? Hilarious, isn't it? But it's the truth. Some of us don't know how to do that. When you say pivot, you really don't have an idea. You know, pivoting, there's pivoting in jazz. There's pivoting in different types of dance routines. I love to dance, that's why I know that. But there are times to pivot. And this, my friend, these times here that we're in, it is our time to pivot. Again, many of you have businesses you're trying to figure out. You don't even know if you're going to survive. You're sitting there looking at your numbers, trying to figure out how you're going to pay your lease, your mortgage, how you're going to pay the mortgage at your place, at your company, or how you're going to pay the mortgage in your home. You're wondering whether you're even going to have a job tomorrow if things persist like this. So what do you do? What do we do? I'll tell you what you can do. First and foremost, before I even do that, let me talk to you. I want to also share another example about a company that pivoted. And it was really interesting how that happened, because I hope that this is something that might be able to spark some thought process and revelation inside of you as to how you can actually pivot in your life. So you can use this for your business, or you can use this for your life. Do you guys remember Wrigley chewing gum? You've all had Wrigley chewing gum, right? Juicy fruit, double mint, spearmint. Okay, we've all had it. Mr. Wrigley, William Wrigley, that is, had no intention on creating a chewing gum for sale. He had to make one of the greatest pivots that are, I guess that's known and unknown, because this might be news to you, of most companies that we know. One of the top 12 companies in the world in history that have ever had to make a pivot, Wrigley has done it. So basically, he was selling baking powder and soap. That's what he was in the business of doing, selling soap and baking powder. So as he was selling the soap and baking powder, he said, well, why don't I make some gum, or I guess he got a hold of some gum, and I'm going to give that away for free. Because it was hard for him to sell his products. Being a salesperson is very hard, isn't it, after all? So it was difficult for him to sell the products. He said, okay, I'm going to throw out a little teaser. So the teaser was in the form of this chewing gum. But lo and behold, as he's going on and giving away for free, who does that? Gives things away for free. Smart people do that. Smart, strategic people do it. But he gave it away for free, and guess what? Everyone started asking for the chewing gum. He left the business of selling soap and the baking powder and started Wrigley's chewing gum. And the rest is history. So he has made billions of dollars from a pivot that he would have never, ever thought that would happen. So when we think about our circumstances right now, that's what we have to think about. We're in a bad situation, some of us. That's true. But what you do with that bad situation is the key. It's your response to what's going on around you that's key. A lot of times, I know you guys have heard the story, or not even the story, the saying, you have bad lemons oh no, not lemonade. If you have lemons, make lemonade out of it, right? From lemons, make lemonade. But what happens if you can't get the lemonade from the lemons? What was expected? You expect to get lemonade from lemons. What do? When what traditionally happens doesn't? Guess what I do? I make orange juice. That's right, I make orange juice. You know why? Because orange juice and lemon juice have a lot of similar properties. They're acidic, they taste really good, they quench your thirst, and they have vitamin C. But guess what? How do you make orange juice from lemons? That's just so contrary to what we know, to basic science in some cases, right? But is it? Is it possible that you can basically take whatever your situation is, and instead of trying to figure out what the traditional way of turning this thing around is, think about a new creative way of making that thing work for you and your business? That's the key. You cannot be afraid of taking a blank canvas and just dreaming and doodling and putting numbers together, putting people together, partnering with people. That is what's needed right now. Now let me take a step back and go into a personal situation as it relates to you. You might be going through something in your life because of the pandemic that requires you to make orange juice out of lemons instead of lemonade. As a matter of fact, I can guarantee that there is somebody behind this camera that's going through something that you think it will take a miracle from God for you to get out of. And it probably will. But just know that in your pivot, you go from this direction that you thought you were going, and remember, you're going a completely other direction. What you're going through today is not something that you will continue to go through. You will have brighter days. Okay? So, let me say this also. I'm a Christian. I love the Lord. Everything I'm about is about Him. Now, you guys, some of you are Christian, others are not, but I believe that every single person, at the sound of my voice, no, I believe that I'm joking, but seriously, I believe that every single person has something that they believe in, faith in something. Some people have faith in the mighty dollar, and I hope that's not you, because then you're in trouble. But you have to have faith in something. Now, in order to pivot, okay, remember, we talked about that. Pivoting. You have to have faith that you're going to do that thing right. You have to have faith in the direction that you're going. This is actually touching me so much. I have to dab my makeup. I don't want my makeup to get up to Anyway, guys, you have to believe that the direction that you're going is the right direction. How do you know that? Who are you hearing from? Where is your faith? Do you believe what the Dow Jones says? Do you believe what CNN says, Fox, your parents, your siblings? Who do you believe? Who do you have faith? God? I put all my faith in God because I know that He will never lead me wrong. He has my best interest at heart. But no matter what and who you put your faith in, you have to be strong in that to know that that person is, or that thing is going to carry you. So, a couple of things. As entrepreneurs, we have some very critical decisions that we need to make. How do you make those decisions? That's a whole nother talk. Ask me about it, I'll be happy to share it with you. But you have some critical decisions to make. Some of you are saying, I didn't sign up for this. Never in my life did I think I'd be going through this, and my family would be going through this time of crisis and dealing with all of that. You didn't see it coming. If I may, I want to share a story about a man called Job. And Job in the Bible was like many of us. He woke up one day and everything was gone. He had everything. You might as well consider him a multi-billionaire and beyond. Beautiful wife, children, house, cattle, land, property, everything, you name it. And in one day, just like that, it was gone. He could not imagine, what could I have possibly done to deserve this? Some of his friends turned on him because no matter what happened, he trusted in the Lord. He had faith in something. His faith was in the Almighty God. But no matter what happened, he trusted. His wife was like, what is wrong with you? She abandoned him. She didn't support him. He lost all his children, lost all the cattle, everything. And his friends ridiculed him. They tried to help him at first, but then they were like, you know what? This is not good. Eventually, because of Job's faith, obedience, and love of God, he was restored. Everything that the devil stole from him was restored. And as a result of that, he got what he lost plus. He was put in a better position than he was before it all happened. But let me ask you this. How do you think Job was feeling when all this happened? Job had to completely change his mindset from being a wealthy man, prosperous, having abundance of life, love, and material things. He had to turn it around so that he could deal in a situation that equates itself to what we know today as modern homelessness, poverty to the worst degree, to the point where he was even sick in his body. Everything was taken away from him. You know, there's some people out there that's going through that Job moment right now. Everything was taken away. I once preached about a man who was like Job. And during the recession of 2009, 2010, he was so frustrated about what happened, so much in despair, he lost hope, that he went into his mansion that had millions of dollars of furniture. He went, furniture and equipment, everything you can imagine. He locked himself in the house, set it on fire, and burned in the house with it, everything. They found him in the house, dead. Why? Because he could not pivot. He could not realize that I'm in a bad situation right now, but this is not going to be my new norm. There's something that I need to do to change, and I've got to be strong to do that. Sometimes we're called to do things that we never thought we would have to do. I'll use another example. Moses, for instance. Moses was called by God so many times, but this poor guy was sitting here minding his own business, tending to his flock, and all of a sudden he sees a burning bush. He's like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with that. How is this burning? How is this happening? God says, Moses, Moses. He calls him, and Moses answers. Moses had no idea what God had in store for him. God asked him to be the catalyst, to be the vessel to go to Pharaoh and release God's people, the Israelites. Now, Moses gave God every excuse as to why he could not do that. Don't you guys know? I don't know if you've ever heard this expression before. Excuses are the tools of the weak and the incompetent that build monuments of nothingness. Those that specialize in excuses seldom excel in anything else. How many excuses have you given to yourself? Or have you given to your spouse or your superior or something or someone that you are responsible for, or to just, like I said, to yourself? Because you have to make yourself believe in you first before anybody else believes in you. Moses, on the other hand, it took so much for God to finally get him to a place to do what he needed. He's like, God, I stutter. God, are you really choosing me? I mean, every excuse. Because what? He was afraid to pivot. He was afraid to change directions. Do you know what fear can do to you? It can immobilize you. It could make you so fearful that you can't even begin to think about what direction you're going to go, let alone walk in that new direction. But now is the time for you to do that. All through your life, you're going to go through something. Yes, we're going through the pandemic. But at any given time and in any part of the world, something terrible could be going on to those people. Before the pandemic, we had hunger and all types of devastation happening in these third world countries. But we don't really think about those things because we're okay. We're in the good old USA. But now look at us. In the midst of a possible civil war happening, and I rebuke that in Jesus' name. But at the end of the day, we're changing. And it's happening so quickly, it's hard for us to pivot. Especially when you really don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what's going to happen. We have to what? Have faith. We've got to believe that as a country, we're going to be stronger. We have to believe that this pandemic situation is going to be gone. And we have to believe that we're going to be able to move away from where we are today, pivot into where we need to be. So there's 3 points I want to share with you. When you pivot, you have to pivot with intention. Okay? You have to intend to do what you believe that you need to do, or what you've been called to do, or what you need to do. Sometimes, like Moses, it's not our choice. But he had to do it. Job, do you think he wanted that kind of affliction on himself? No, nobody wants that, but it happens. And it's okay. The Bible tells us that we're not going to have good days always. We have to know that we're going to have some bad times. But again, it's on us to deal with it. So again, pivot with intention. So what do I mean by that? Here I go again with my illustrations. I intend to go that way. That's my intention. So when I pivot, okay, I know exactly where I want to go. Do you know where you want to go? That's something about me. I have to tell you, from the time I was a young girl, I always knew what I wanted to do in life and where I wanted to be. I've had to pivot through that, just like anybody else. But I've always had an intention, and that's a great place to start. When I was 18 years old, I went to college. I was one of the student ambassadors. I was in student government. I mean, I was just connected to the president at the college. I decided at that time I wanted to be a college president, 18, 19 years old. When so few people, especially women, less than 1% of women at that time, and even now, it's a very small percentage of women who are college presidents today, let alone one who is African American. Hello. But I did not let that stop me from believing that I can do it. It didn't stop me from taking the steps towards getting that done. If I didn't reach it, that's okay. It's okay too. But you try. That's the thing, you have to try, okay? So in your mind, you have to have an intention. Where do you want to go? What do I intend to do? An intention also means that you also have to have an outcome. I'm in academia. That's the formula. You have a goal, you have to have an outcome that is measurable. So, intention. The second thing is direction. Goal, outcome that's measurable, but what happens in between there? How do you actually get to where it is that you're trying to go? That is the question that you need to answer. And guess what? There are ways in which you can do that. If it's about changing your whole business model, there are people out there that can help you to do that. But nobody knows your business better than you do. If you don't own that business, nobody knows your department better than you do. And if somebody does, then you have some work to do, because you need to make sure that you master your craft. Whatever it is that you do it to the best of your ability. 300%, not 100, not 200, but 300%. Because with that, your blessings will come. It doesn't matter. You can be a singer. You can flip burgers at McDonald's. Whatever it is, you do it to the best of your ability. So going back to my point, direction. You need to have a plan. Remember in the Friends example that I shared with you? This guy had a plan laid out how they were going to bring the couch upstairs, a narrow set of steps. And you mean to tell me you don't have a plan for your life? You don't have a plan for your business in the midst of a pandemic? No, you do have a plan. Take the time to figure out what your plan truly is. And that's the easiest part, is once you have your intention and you know what your goal is, you become laser focused towards getting to that place. Figuring out what your plan is and carrying it out. There are mentors out there. There are people doing exactly what you do. There are other people, you don't have to go to your competition. There are people there to help you, and there are books. Okay, I still read books. I still highlight books. I enjoy that. But guess what? There's a lot on social media. There's a lot on YouTube. You can teach yourself anything on YouTube nowadays. Be better. Have a plan. And if you need help in getting to where it is that you need to go, just ask for it. It's okay to ask for help. The other thing is, the final thing is conviction. Do you hear the conviction in my voice? Anything that I plan to do, I plan to excel in it, and I plan to succeed. Do I always succeed? No, but that's okay. I believe in failing forward. How about you? Because we all know we're going to fail, right? But if we fail, fail forward. Learn from what happened and fail forward. We're all learning from what happened here over this last year with this pandemic and everything else. The country and all of government agencies, everyone has had to change their business model. At the college in which I lead, we did not have any idea what we were going to do. But God is my witness. My revelation comes from Him. I have been able to pull together a team of people, and together we created a plan with a strategy that I led, that I developed through God to be able to get us through the pandemic. I came up with an idea to have a single mother's free tuition scholarship program in the midst of the pandemic. God gave that to me. If it wasn't for, and we executed that plan, by the way, okay? It was an intention, we had direction, and we executed that plan. I was convicted. I knew, I had conviction. Then I knew that there are a lot of, I know that there are a lot of single parents out there, men and women, and they need an education. We reached out, and guess what? When all of our other peer institutions were experiencing a decline, in some ways a precipitous decline in enrollment, we stabilized and actually saw increases. That's what it's about, guys. Take a moment to step back from what you're doing to figure it out. You can't be in the mix day to day, day in and day out. And I know what it's like. I'm an entrepreneur too. You're in it. You're in the thick of it, trying to do the business, but yet you're not strategically planning the business. So again, when we talk about intentions and directions, I keep going back, so I keep getting it into you. That's all a part of your strategic plan. But once you create all that, you have to believe in it. You have to believe that it's going to work. Sometimes that's going to require that you literally are trying to sell your supervisor the plan, or your spouse the plan, or your children the plan. Whatever the situation is, you have to be your own cheerleader. Hello? Rah, 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 your own hype man or woman. Conviction. Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. So what I want to say to you today, before we go, is that pivoting is the only way. It's not just a necessity. It's inevitable. So now is your time to what? Pivot. Pivot. And pivot. It's been my pleasure to be before you today. I am happy to help you guys. And if there's anything that you ever need, please feel free to call upon me. Also, one last thing. In the midst of this pandemic, this is a testimony I want to share with you. I finished my book. The book is called I Am a Christian First, 12 Success Principles from a Christian CEO. Something I didn't think I'd have time to do, but I took the time that we all had when people were just hanging out at home, watching TV and doing what they did. I took that time to finish the book. And now I was able to publish the book during the pandemic, and just yesterday, it became Amazon's #1 bestseller in my category. And on top of that, it was a #1 new release for the day on Amazon yesterday. Now, you tell me what God can do. You tell me that you cannot do this. Don't tell me that, actually. I want you to tell me what you're going to do as a result of this message. I want you to start putting your plans in place to do your pivot and make sure that it is successful, because you can do it. We are all going to be okay. So I wish you the best of all in all of your endeavors, and I thank you so much for your time. God bless you.